What's up, Beastcoast Pokemon fans and just Pokemon fans around the world? We are here on the Beastcoast channel to break down the news that has come out about the 2025 Pokemon competitive season. And guys, this one's a doozy. We have had a lot of changes come through from this official announcement. So I don't even know where to start, honestly, when it comes down to the news that we got.
Yeah, some big changes. I mean, I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me is the removal of the championship point bar and the replacement of the top 75 invites in North America, and the amount varies by region. But yeah, this is a system that we had in like 2014 era, right? James, do you remember the exact years?
Yeah, it was 2014, 2015, and I believe I don't remember if Gen 5 had it. I feel like 13 might have, but I know 2014, 2015 definitely had it.
Yeah, I also couldn't remember 13. But yeah, so a format that we haven't seen for quite some time.
I remember actually when I started playing in 2014, I looked at the number of players that could qualify for Worlds. I laughed at it and I said, I'm just going to have a good time this season because there's no way that I'm going to be able to qualify for Worlds with just the number of spots there are and how many good competitors there are that are in the scene. So like, I'm really interested to see how the wider community reacts to this knowledge, because there are even still issues with it being an X number of competitors making it to Worlds when that system was in place. And I remember like just the race at the very end of the season to get into that final spot was so competitive. And I personally worry about that coming back again.
Yeah, I think that like the system is interesting. I understand why they were interested in kind of having a set number of invites. I imagine it's pretty hard to plan an event when you have no idea how many people like could show up to play in it. And I don't think that I inherently have an issue with like a top X system. I think for me the biggest kind of thing that's going to make or break this is the fact that they've announced that there are shared best finish limits between internationals and regionals. I think the danger of a top X finish system is that it doesn't necessarily reward the players who have the best finishes. It often just rewards the players who can go to the most events. And a best finish limit is a way to kind of get around that, right? Where it's like, okay, even if you go to all, like, let's pretend there was a best finish limit of 1 for internationals, which give way more points than anything else. Then it would be like, okay, maybe you can afford to go to 3 internationals, but you're only getting points from one of those. So like, you aren't necessarily benefiting more than somebody who just goes to 1 and does really well because it's only your best finish. Like basically you get 3 pulls of the slot machine, but that's it. But in the current system, because regionals and internationals share a best finish limit, and rather than internationals having a best finish limit, like I think it still heavily incentivizes people to go to multiple internationals, which is expensive no matter where you are.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of outrage. I've seen a lot of mixed opinions, but mostly outrage on Twitter. And I think there are some interesting benefits, and I have my own theories on like why this is happening, why we needed this new structure, as well as like I just think that internets, I think they do want to incentivize like players traveling to internets for the big competition. I just don't see like how they marketed it. So it's like I don't think they ever want to do a BFL for one, unfortunately, which I think would probably be more beneficial to everyone in general for like making this more of a fair competition of like performance based. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what structure it's going to be, there's obviously going to be unfairness. I think this is going to test who really wants to like, I think the big thing is you do actually have to commit. I don't think like you can like easily get an invite anymore compared to like previous where you could like take some of the months off from the event or some months off from the season. I think you do actually have to go with a pretty big investment period into this. And I think that's something that's going to be a lot different.
I think that's where there's 2 schools of thought, right? Because I've seen a lot of competitors that have maybe been top 30, top 40 this season, not necessarily as stressed out about these season changes because they've already known they're going to commit a ton of time to every single Pokemon season. So it's not like the circuit changes too much on how they would end up approaching how many events that they play, which ones they go to, etc. But I think like where I see a lot of the discourse is the people that have decided, maybe for my mental health, it is so much better to not go to every single event. Like you play the first couple, you get your invite because you know the CP that you need to hit. And then once you are able to crush that threshold, you can take it easy, or you can go play an event for fun, or just be able to take that mental health break for yourself, where I'm in agreement with both of you. I feel like this system almost makes it feel like you have to go to every single event if you want to maintain a top 75 spot. Because like the competition was already very fierce in 2024, and I just don't see it changing that much in terms of the complexity and difficulty of keeping a spot like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's tough because in my opinion, Pokemon is not a game you should be playing every weekend. Like it's especially like it's just so difficult. And I mean, there's like traveling is hard, like just like straight up. And then like a game like Pokemon with so much variance that's so mentally taxing, I think is like not. I don't know many people who I don't personally know many people who I think could be playing every weekend or even most weekends and like have it still remain a positive force in their lives for long. That being said, people do it, and maybe other people are just like different than the people that I know. But like, I do think that it's like really good to take time off from the game, and so in theory, this is where best finish limits would help a lot, right? Where if it was, let's say, 4 regionals and 1 international, then it's like, okay, well, like I can miss a couple events, right? I think even still, I think people are maybe overestimating it because like I went to 6 events this year, 2 internationals and 4 regionals, and like that felt pretty manageable. And I did that including a pretty like 4 months off from the game, right? Like September through, or I guess I went to one event in September, but let's say October through end of December, like 3 months off. And so like I still was able to go to 6 events and like it was fine for me. And so I think that like if the BFLs were just slightly lower, it'd probably be totally fine, especially with internationals. But yeah, with things like how things stand, it is tough because we do as a community place a lot of emphasis on like worlds and like playing in worlds. And I think that makes sense. But I think it's probably tough when people like really want to play, but like it's just a different system, right? Like people have been getting to worlds kind of like nickel and diming it for the most part, right? Like going to a ton of events, getting top 32, top 64, maybe top 16, and then doing well at locals. And that, like that's not going to cut it in this new system, I think, because of the limited number of spots, which yeah, it's tough for sure for people who like really want to play in worlds, but like don't always get like super high placements.
Yeah, it's just gonna be pretty rough for those kinds of players, especially. I think that this is gonna be. I mean, when we had the system back in like 2015, it was top 40, so at least it's not going back to those kind of numbers. And that was large. I think thinking back in the day, it was like what, like top 12 sometime.
Yeah, I feel like it. I forgot about this. I missed in 2014. I forgot about this. I didn't qualify in 2014.
Yeah, last chance qualifier.
I had to go through the LCQ. Yeah, like last chance qualifier. Yeah, so I forgot about that. Yeah, it was really hard back in 2014. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I did the same thing, but it also like I only went to 1 regional or 2 regional. No, actually 2 or 3 regionals. I can't remember if it's 3 or not, but then again, I think the thing was that system was completely different because regionals were completely different back in the day when it was more like spread out. Like we didn't have like a regional like every month. It was like we had the winter season and then the spring season generally, I think, or maybe it was like fall and spring, but kind of the same thing, right? Where like you would have like a bunch of regionals throughout this like 1 month period. And like there'd be multiple regionals even on the same date. So like you didn't even have to commit that much time. Realistically, you would just have to go to like maybe one of those regionals in this fall, one of the regionals in the spring, and then the national championship, which was only like best finish limit of 1 back then. So I think utilizing it for this kind of system, I think it's kind of brutal. Like top 75 for all of that. Locals points, like they have the new changes for locals, of course. We have now like the cups challenges, whatever, replacing premier challenges and mid-season showdowns. Cups, I just don't, or challenges. The one that gives 15 CP. Well, actually, no. It's like whatever.
I think it's like the challenges give 15, and then like the MSS equivalent, which is now a cup, gives
50. I think it
50,
still gives 50.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I think MSSs do, or whatever the equivalent is. They're still, those are important. I don't think the challenges one is worth it unless you're really going to be worried about like that cutoff period of top 75 realistically. But yeah, it does make like going to more events actually like way more crucial. I'm kind of glad they did like lower the limit. I think there were better ways to do this, of course. Like I think a lot of players have been talking about, oh, they could have just increased the points the points bar, or they could have just changed the number of best finish limits, or they could have rearranged like the amount of CP distributed from events. And I think those would have been better solutions. But I think my theory to this is why they changed it to this like top X system or whatever. I think Yokohama did have a major impact. This is at least my theory, where there was a pretty large amount of people and a lot of, I would say, not so great things that happened at Worlds in general. Like it wasn't exactly the best managed event. And I think like the people in charge were like, okay, we need to make sure like it's more controllable. Like we've had the most amount of invites, which I think is fair in the past couple of years, and the game's been growing, which has been great. But logistically wise, it might not be the best. And we've been seeing it with the new system that they're implementing for regionals. We're having less Swiss rounds. So maybe they just want to cut back on everything from staff to like individuals like competing at the event. So that's kind of been my theory, at least on it, because I think they were like, okay, we do not want what happened at Yokohama to happen again in the future, which is kind of a shame because I don't think it was players' like faults at all, but I think that's just what happened, and this is the way that they could do it without taking the least amount of responsibility.
I think if I'm reading this correctly, we had 1,600 players at Japan Worlds.
Not players, maybe across both games, because this year there's a ton.
Because it'd be all games, right? Because it's
all
Go,
games, maybe all
Unite,
games.
TCG,
right,
VGC.
that sounds plausible, because there's 800 VGC invites this season, right? So
yeah.
Oh, I was like, where was Worlds last year? Man, time flies. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, that sounds about right, Rose. Maybe 1,600 players.
Like, that's insane when you think about before that at London. I feel like we had a much more manageable number. I want to say maybe it was like 800, maybe like maximum 1,000. But the fact that it jumped from 1,600 in Japan, and now this year in Hawaii, we're looking at even bigger numbers for like VG alone. You said 800?
I think that's what I heard. I think it's over. I think it's 800 something invites for VG.
That's wild. And I think that's including the number of competitors that qualified through CP bars from North America, the EMEA region, Oceania, as well as LATAM. And then you're also adding in the number of predetermined spots that are guaranteed through all of the different Asian national qualifiers. That's a lot of players. And I've already heard talks of potentially there being maybe some logistical issues with, like, people are talking about like seating, or some people have pointed out that there's some now verbiage on some of the player kit items that are like, you could get this in your kit as supplies last. Like, that is a logistical issue that this might become a problem for, is the stuff that you are guaranteed as a player. Are there even enough seats? Are there enough Hori stands for all of the competitors competing? Like, just, yeah, it's a lot to have to think about and plan in advance if you don't know the exact numbers.
Especially spectators too. I don't know about spectator numbers, but if I'm not mistaken, I've heard like Hawaii, probably the least amount of spectators like got approved for the badges, which I think is like pretty big, because I don't know many people who actually got it. Like, most players who have gotten their invite do get 2 extra spectator passes, but otherwise, like, the ones who actually had to enter the lottery system in order to buy like a spectator pass, if you didn't know anyone, like, I don't think anyone I know who actually tried it out of like 50 people actually got it. So I would say that this might be like one of their plans to like make it like less numbers in general. So like, either A, they could profit more on spectator passes, or B, maybe they have plans with the space that they would have had for the players for like different attractions like we saw in Japan.
It also might be that like they can't give out spectator passes this year because they only have they can only fit, I'm going to give a number, let's say 10,000 people in the hall. And like with competitors taking up a bigger bulk of that, then like there's less room left over for spectators. I think it makes sense. It's like I think the logistical aspect of planning a tournament when you have no idea how many people are going to show up, and I imagine a lot of the stuff you have to plan pretty far in advance, right? Like, I don't think they're like sewing the Pikachus together, the week before Worlds. At least, God, I hope not. And so, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense from their end to want to know how many players are playing in Worlds. My personal feeling is that, like, I don't think it's wrong for Worlds to be like, I don't have an issue with it personally being more exclusive, because I think it is supposed to be the best in the world. And like, if you're one of the best in the world, like, I think that like you should be able to qualify. Now, we don't always live in the should world, but like, yeah, like that's the ideal. Like, I think I would rather have a smaller world with like worlds with more like really high quality like players compared to like a really broad worlds, because I think it adds a lot more variance the more players there are. By the way, something that you kind of alluded to, James, that I think is a really positive change from all this is the fact that there's no more stupid resistance, no more missing cut on resistance anymore, which is, in my opinion, phenomenal. I don't know how you all think, but I really like the new Swiss structure. Fewer games overall, And yeah, like you also like don't have to worry about a made up tiebreaker that doesn't work, I think is like really great.
Yeah.
Actually, was that confirmed? Was it I don't remember. I know like it's still 8th seed, but I don't remember they limited like World State for top 32.
Oh, sorry. There's still resistance for top 32, but if for winning the tournament, you know what I mean? You just have to get the same record. Like no more, no more missing out on top cut because of resistance.
Yeah, I don't know how the numbers work for that. So like if there's more, if it actually impacts 8C to 32, I don't know if there is number. I think it'd be like a large amount if I'm not mistaken. So it shouldn't affect us.
So it's interesting, like for people that don't know, I don't know if we talked about the format adjustment for the World Championships, but in the past, or for all of our events in the 2024 season, we have had 9 rounds of Swiss on day number 1 into a 7-2 record or better, making it to day number 2. And then on day number 2, you play an additional 5 or 6 rounds of Swiss, depending on the number of participants that were at the regional, from which the top 8 players would be able to play in a single elimination top 8 cut bracket. Now, the problem with that system was that we had a lot of players that would be at similar records, maybe like 11-3, and they would miss out on being able to play that cut because 1 or 2 people had the best 11-3 records based on the resistance that they had, or essentially like the win percentage versus better opponents is kind of like how I would probably sum up what resistance is. But now we're moving forward to the World Championships this season with a Swiss +1 format. And that format will stay for the remainder of the 2025 season, looking at what they've announced so far, which is good because I think people ran the numbers on Swiss +1 for Worlds, and it does mitigate quite a bit of the impact that resistance would have to screw people over, essentially, is how I'd put it.
Yeah, I hate resistance so much. I think resistance is the crappiest system. Well, I shouldn't say of all time, but I think it's a really, 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 really crummy system. And like, yeah, I think getting rid of it for determining who, like, it feels so bad to be like, I don't know, 9th, 10th, whatever, like seeds, and then see like somebody at 8th, 7th, 6th seed with your record go on to win the tournament. It's like, oh, like, especially with how the resistance system was broken, right? Where like your day 1 record didn't count at all. So yeah, I think it's a really positive change. And like, yeah, honestly, like for me personally, I think it's a shame that it's getting kind of looked over so much. I feel like so many people are focused on the invites because I think it's a tremendous circuit advancement and fewer rounds overall. I think if I got to pull up the table, I was just looking for it, but like I believe that now it's
a max of 14 Swiss rounds.
Yeah, but we would generally have like
kickers.
+2 or +3 for the Swiss rounds in day 2, so we would probably be playing like 2, 3. I don't think we're ever hitting 4, at least for a while.
Oh, here it is. But yeah, it's only 8 Swiss rounds day 1, right? So it's like basically we just saved 4 rounds for most tournaments. Like because the play, like most tournaments, we haven't had one go over 10-25, right? So basically we'd be going from 15 rounds down to 11, and like tournaments are so exhausting. Being able to wrap up an extra hour earlier on day 1, and then like not having to play like 6 Swiss rounds before Top Cut starts day 2. I think both of those are really positive changes, and also allow more time. I mean, maybe you could speak to this, Rose, but like about like for like stream matches, right? I think oftentimes like it's only 1 or 2 top 8 games. So with more time, maybe it'd be possible to stream like all of the Top Cut, right? Or I don't know. I guess you'd have more. It wouldn't just be top 8 anymore, but you get what I'm saying.
I mean, one of my biggest I wouldn't see like complaints, because like at the end of the day, there's only so much time in a day and only so much that we can accommodate on stream. But I always was so sad at the fact that we would start our regional runs so late in the day. Granted, round 1 and 2 regionals, probably not the best streaming experience, just because people are tired. I feel like sometimes you don't always get very good games, or we aren't really afforded very good matchups. So it's just is always so hit or miss for those first couple of tournaments in our first couple of tournament rounds within a tournament. But with less number of Swiss rounds, like for example, if it's going to be anywhere between 257 to 1,024 players, we'll have 8 rounds of Swiss on the first day. I could totally see a world where we're able to now stream all 8 rounds. Like, don't quote me on that, because like I'm not in charge of the scheduling at the end of the day, but it'd be nice if you'd be able to show a tournament story from start to finish. And then even just taking a look at the next day, yeah, it's like 2 rounds of additional Swiss or 3 rounds of additional Swiss, and then we go into top 8 cut. Way more time to show off like 2 top 8 matches, both top 4s, and the finals, no problem. Or at least it sounds simple when you put it that way.
Yeah, I think it's overall a good direction for the game. Like, Pokemon is very exhausting, that having these number of rounds limiting the luck variants that can actually go into resistance, because it's a little bit less schedule dependent, where all you have to do is just like win your games and you'll be able to have a chance for the title, which I think is like a very solid change overall. I think my only downside to the new change is if the new point structure. So if you have looked at the new point structure, there is a significant gap between top 8 and then like not cutting. It's like pretty significant in both regionals and international systems, and I don't understand like why it's so significant, because it's like either it's even more than double or sometimes even triple the amount of like points, like compared to like, or like compared to like, oh, the next change, right? So like I think like, for instance, like I'd have to look at the numbers again, but like the difference between a top 16 to top 32, right? The difference between those placements, like it's either double or triple that number for like a top 16 and top 8.
So essentially for the championship points that you're talking about, a win at a regional is 350. Second place is 325. So not too much of a difference there. And top 4 is 300. But top 8 is 280 and top 16 is 160. So with asymmetrical cut, you are guaranteeing that there's going to be a certain number of players that fit in that threshold of like 9th through 12th, let's say, and they're getting a chance at being able to play for a higher placement. But if you lose, that is a big chunk of points. What is that? 120 points?
Yeah, it's 120 for regionals and internets. I think it might be a 200.
Oh, it's 200. Yeah, it's 200. Internets is 600 for top 8 and 400 for top 16.
Which is a pretty big gap compared to the other gap numbers or placement numbers. So that's just one of the things I didn't like. I think overall, if the like Premier Challenge was already pretty bad from like what it used to be 30 to 15, I think the difference between top 8, top 16 shouldn't be that drastic. I could understand a little bit more for a top 8, but like I don't think it should be that much.
Not with asymmetrical cut, right?
Yeah,
like, I think that's the biggest issue, is just that it's asym cut, and that's where that point differential is going to feel so bad.
The only kind of redeeming thing about it is that, for at least in the international side, the people who place top 4 are all being eliminated from the championship point. They're not taking invite slots, right? Like, because you get auto invite at that point. So, like at the very least, like the people who are really getting a ton of championship points from internets are also not taking slots from the other people. But you're right, and I think it is still. It's kind of a weird grouping, because normally what we do is, like, in a perfect world, what it feels like should happen is that we group by like top cut or no top cut, right? Because it seems like there's 2 groups, right? It's like you get a lot of points or you get like a lot less points, and within those 2 groups, the divisions between like first, like each loss is only like 20 something points or 50 points maybe at the internet's level. And so it feels like the divide should be between you made it into top cut or you didn't make it into top cut. But you're right in that in an asymmetrical cut, it doesn't make as much sense. I almost wonder if it has something to do with like the trading card game or like one of the other games, but I'm just honestly shooting fish in a barrel. Is that the right way to use the expression? I have no idea.
Are we 3 fish in a barrel?
I don't think I used it right. I was taking a guess. That's the right one. That's what I'm trying to say.
I have no idea, because I don't think I've heard that expression before, but I'll
maybe I didn't either.
I'll believe you in that one. But yeah, so overall, so the championship points brackets have changed essentially. I'm not sure like how the numbers exactly work. I think lowering for locals was fine. BFLs for locals being lowered, I think, is healthier. Agreed. Internets and regional sharing the BFL, which is interesting, of 6 total events, is a new change. And before, if the audience didn't know, it would be 6 regionals and then internationals. Well, it was only 3, I guess. So 3, technically 4 if we count prior years as well, because OCIC. But overall, I think this is actually kind of a healthier change. I think the BFL is still a little bit too big, and obviously like a 1 BFL internets would probably be more ideal in like a greater world, but realistically, I think it's pretty solid, which means like if you go to 3 internationals, you still have to place well at the internationals while having only 3 regional spots open, which I still think is pretty solid. I don't know how the point structure works now, because the points being super different, I think it just emphasizes like major events are going to be the core focus, which I think is a good thing for the most part. I think like you should be able to place well at these regionals and internationals, at least one of them, to get an invite. I think is pretty reasonable for the most part. So I don't think that's too bad. Like prizing, we get more cars, I guess.
Guys, can I be honest? I have like, if I were to lower this green screen, I won't because it is a mess behind it, believe me. But like, I have like boxes and boxes of cards going back to like 2014, maybe. Like just like unopened sealed boxes from tournaments. I like need to figure out what to do with them because they're just like sitting there. I read the more boxes prizing and I was like, oh no, where if I win packs, where am I gonna put them?
Wolfey, you should auction off boxes that you've signed and just sell them that way.
Yeah, but I'm lazy.
Or do a Patreon raffle. You have a Patreon. Just raffle.
True.
Just raffle.
I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. But I feel like I've kept them for this long because some of these are old. I'm like, oh, maybe in like another 20 years they'll be worth like something.
Ones.
They're already probably worth something. I remember selling like some of my old boxes when it was 2019, and it was a lot more than I expected. But yeah, we're getting more cards, and this is for like not only for the top placements, but even for like we actually have prizing, I guess, for like top 32. I think even top 64, depending on the numbers. But yeah, unfortunately, regionals did not get a top 32 buff for prize money. Internet's still going to be keeping the same structure, like both regionals and internets. I still don't get worlds though. Like, can someone humor me about like top 32 at internets gets prize money, top 32 at worlds for VGC does not. I just never understood that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, so I knew where you were going with this.
Wait, you're right.
Because I had the exact same conversation with a couple of other people just a little while ago, and it doesn't actually make any sense. Like, I'm trying to wrap my brain around it, give Pokemon the benefit of the doubt, but it is super weird that the biggest tournament of the year, I think, is undeniably the World Championships. Yet there's way more prize spots available for cash than at an internet, which is...
I know why.
Tell us, Wolf.
They forgot.
They just forgot.
They forgot. I think they probably did. I think probably the person who decided on the prize money for internets and the person who decided on worlds, maybe they didn't talk, or maybe it's the same person and they just forgot.
Unfortunately, I think it'd be hard because I imagine they also manage TCG, and TCG also has that. They actually have top 32 pricing, but VGC's never.
Wait, they do have top 32 prizing.
Yes.
Yeah, so they just forgot. Maybe somebody like deleted the line of code out of the table. Maybe it's just like top 32, $1 million. And then like, yeah, like you have to solve a treasure map to get it if you get top 32.
I mean, there might be hope because they did actually make an error when they first released this. Apparently the prize money was not accurate at all in the beginning. They said it was like the same. And then the chart just was completely different numbers. First and second place had $1,000 less for doing those placements at regionals. And like people were super confused, and then they fixed it within like an hour.
Okay, so maybe they really did just forgot.
I mean, it would be great if they added more prize money for 17th through 32nd place at Worlds. That's for sure.
Or a bag. Back in the day, you used to get a cool bag.
That would be cool.
They did that for Japan, I think, though.
I wouldn't know. I couldn't tell you, James. I'll be honest.
Oh, actually, no, they did. They actually gave you a top 32 card in Japan, and they gave you a bag for top 16, which is funny because those bags were TCG and VGC, you only got them for top 8. So
they forgot again. What the heck?
Well, you know, something that they kind of also sort of forgot is more details about something else that was hidden within the 2025 announcements, which is something about championship point rewards. So there's a blurb somewhere in the championship series update that discusses there will be more information announced about a new prizing system based on championship points. Now, like, there's a lot of different speculation about what this could look like. It could be promo cards. It could be like plush, like prizes, whatever else. But I think that's actually like a really interesting concept that you could potentially cash in your championship points for something tangible. What do you guys think?
Okay, imagine that, imagine it's like the Chuck E. Cheese wall, okay? And you can turn championship points into like prizes but you have to do it before the season is over, okay? And it's while supplies last. So, like, let's say you win, or like, no, you get like second at your first regional. You're like, oh, should I spend $50 on like the Mimikyu wearing the Snorlax costume, or should I like, am I gonna need these championship points to qualify for Worlds? I think that's how it should work.
I think it would be pretty funny if they did that, but no, it's pretty interesting. There's like a few things that were kind of either left out or changed a bit. For instance, the travel award pricing, it's kind of the same as the previous years, but there is a little bit of a difference where you can actually like for signing up for these internationals, sometimes it can be a pretty big headache at times, and they actually do have some reserve slots this time for people who do well in the quarter. So I thought that was actually a pretty good change.
Agreed.
Overall. They left out Worlds travel awards, so that's kind of interesting. So I'm kind of curious if there's going to be a tier for like travel awards for Worlds, kind of like our top 12 we did this year. If there's going to be like a separate thing, we're going to have like a round one buy, or if they're getting rid of that, or if that's something they're going to adjust down the line. I'm also curious on how that would work. Like if you had gotten multiple invites, let's say you won a regional championship, you get into like the top, like let's say you're like top 5 in North America for standings, like how would the invites work? Do you take away a slot from the top 75 that way? Because for doing well at like regionals or internet,
no,
then
I think they said that.
I think they actually already adjust that. So like if you get an automatic invite through placing top 4 at an IC now, it used to be top 2 for the 2024 season, or if you win a regional, it does not take out from the 75 slots that NA is, it would tack on essentially. So like, let's say James, you win the first regional of the season, right out the gates, you are locked in for a spot at Worlds and there's still 75 spots available. That's how that would work.
Yeah.
I would just be curious if like they did add like a different tier invite, kind of like how we have for this year, like how would it work?
Oh, I think you can still earn championship points, but you don't take away. Like, I think that probably like the total number of world slots is still being competed for, like 75, and you're not a part of that, but you are in the championship point race for like travel awards. That's my interpretation.
Same.
By the way, last thing that we didn't talk about, that I think last thing, we know the dates for the internationals way in advance. It's actually very nice.
Yeah.
Like I have there's like a wedding that I was invited to on the weekend of NAIC, and like rather than having to play the worst game of chicken of all time, I can say like I know now. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really great change, and it's nice to see that like they're listening to the feedback, because like obviously this year dates stuff wasn't like super poggers. I think
we also have a majority of the regionals too, at least for this part of the season. It looks like we still don't have it for we don't have it for the next couple
December.
Yeah, we have it for the next couple months, but we don't have it for the rest of the season. So that's going to be interesting on planning wise, but I'm not too surprised. Maybe we'll get them after Worlds or a little bit later into the season. But I do like that we have the international dates. I do think that's a really good change. Of course, the thing is, I hope the registration system is at least improved. That registration system from New Orleans that we started using. I don't know how that's going to go. I'm kind of curious also on like how motivation wise that this impacts our numbers. Like, will we hit our like the caps or something? Is going to be a big question as well, because even if we know the dates in advance, unless you're confident about like getting into like the top slots for the getting to the top slots for like the reservations of like guaranteeing that you get to sign up, you still have to think about like what happens if I don't get if I'm not able to sign up, even if I book my trip. By the way, always book refundable trips, people, or have a credit card that gives you refundables, because
I'd never book refundable. I gotta start doing that, I guess.
It is like, it feels bad though, right? Because let's say you're in like a 50th position and you miss out on being able to register for the North America International Championships, the final event of the year. And you know that everyone else in spots 51 to 100 have locked in a spot, but you did not. Your season's over. Like,
you gotta practice mashing. We gotta build like an Arcanine registration simulator, and we gotta like solve the puzzle earlier. Remember this year? Remember registration this year? Oh boy, that's another stuff for another video.
It's funny because I tried, like I knew that I was probably not attending, but I still did the race anyway, like normal. And it took like first try failed. I don't remember second try. Was there even a third try? It might have been the second try that I'm talking about, where like 10 minutes went by and it still kept crashing, and I was able to get in thankfully just because that we didn't hit the cap. in general, but like if we had hit the cap early on, I just don't think I was going to be able to qualify regardless. It's going to be rough for those top 75. I don't really like the dynamic of like how it goes, because sometimes like Travel Wars situation with the day 2 race was already pretty bad with like the top 8 slots, or sometimes it would be like 16 people in the running generally. For the most part, we'd probably like pray that, you know, those opponents would not do as well during those tournaments. Now it's like, I think with the invite system, you might be praying for several people's downfall, which I think encourages a bit of a toxic mentality. So
just have to be mature, I think. Like,
yeah,
it's hard, but you just have to be like focus on being the best version of you, and then what happens, right?
Yep. At the end of the day, you can only do what's in your control, right? Which is going to the tournaments that you can and playing the best that you can possibly make it out to be.
One time I went to a regional, and I like did well at the regional, and I was like in contention for top 8 spots in North America. Like, I think this was 2019. And then after the regional, like there was like an MSS, and I was like, oh, I should probably play, because like I basically had taken a huge chunk of the season off, but then I went like top 4 UIC and then top 4 at this regional. So I was suddenly like kind of in contention, and I played against a guy who I guess was also gunning for one of the spots. And then he like we were both playing in the MSS, and like I played him, like I think I won, doesn't really matter. And then like he was watching to see, like next round he was watching to see if I lost, and he thought that I lost, so he forfeited his round to like try and hurt my resistance so that I might miss cuts, so that I might miss out on points, so that he could take the spot. But then I won, and he couldn't read my body language, and also it ended up not mattering because I won NAIC that year, and so I was like very clearly in the spot, and he also got a spot that year in top 8. And I thought it was so like scummy. I was like, I wasn't upset about it, I was just like in disbelief. I was like, it never would have occurred to me. I was like, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean you like, I think actually his match had finished, and he was waiting to decide, and he had won, and he was waiting to decide if he wanted to forfeit or not. I was just like, I was in so much disbelief. I like couldn't, to this day, I still can't believe it. So yeah, that's a little preview for what might happen this year. But resistance doesn't matter anymore. Let's go.
Dude, the travel ward race has changed people. I remember 2020, I felt like I had an auto loss against Javier, and I was playing that MSS for the travel ward to OCIC, and I was like, they like made me, they forced me to stop playing the MSS like round 2. They made me forfeit that game, and I'm like, if I lose, because apparently I couldn't play both events.
Oh, you were playing 2 at once.
I wasn't technically playing 2 at once, but it was like I like asked the judge, hey, if I lose the finals real quick, could I still continue playing the MSS for the TA? Because I thought I didn't have a matchup to win, and they were like, sure. So like I was just hoping that they would rush the IC process, like the finals process.
You were in the finals of the tournament.
Yeah, I was hoping I won.
Oh my god.
And I did win.
And you were like, maybe it's more optimal for me to just scoop so that I can play the MSS.
Not scoop, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a madman. I'm gonna go all in. Like if I win, great. If I don't,
this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Lose the MSS, lose the finals of the international championships to play in the MSS. You're nuts. That's crazy.
It was LIC 2020. I was using the Groudon Size Spam team against Choice Scarf Lunala Surf Mega Ray.
Remember this?
I had lost to Javier in Swiss. I was like, I'm pretty sure that this matchup is really unlikely for me to win unless I get every single read right. So I was like, okay, I know that I can win. But I was like, okay, I can't really plan this because I can't really expect. I ran the lines in my head already for 5 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, I have to go risky. And I told Ashton that we were talking at the venue, and I'm like, yeah, I can't really game plan against this. Like, I just have to go commit to everything. And if I get it right, I get it right. But if I get one turn wrong, I just lose.
I'm picturing like over the intercom, like James Beck to the finalist stage, please. And you're like locked in round 2 of the MSS, like that burns my eyes. It's like with like a Tempelele.
They literally had like 3 staff come approach me after I like won like round 2. I was about to win round 2. Then they had to make me sign up like a lose because of like I had to go on the stage. Like, please, either I win LAIC so I get the travel or to OCIC, or like at least let me lose quick so I could continue playing because I could still technically get the ታ from
you
points.
Like lose game 1 and you're like, okay, I have to forfeit. Like it's over.
James won anyway, so like
I
it's all good. I remember this matchup. I think I casted this one.
You did cast it. I was in disbelief that I had won that matchup.
I'm gonna watch it.
I had locked in. I think that was the thing. Like crazy desperation makes you lock in and play like a madman, and it worked.
This is all
Well-
the foreshadow of the 2025 season, everybody. So I think on that note, I think we're all looking forward to seeing how the changes affect the next circuit. Don't know whether it's going to be good or bad yet, but these are our thoughts so far.
Yeah, especially let us know in the comments down below whether if you have just started VGC or you're planning to attend this season, do these changes impact any of your decisions that you were going to make for this season compared to like if we had the rules set in for the previous season? Because I've seen a lot of takes and I'm pretty curious. So let us know in the comments down below, especially because I think we would all be interested.
And make sure you're drinking water and staying hydrated. It's hot out there. Bye-bye.
Bye, gamers.